Okay, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to produce this really lovely yet simple and elegant two-piece dress from your bodice block and your knee-length skirt block. It's actually quite a simple pattern to put together, and all we're really doing is basically adding a front vent and changing the location of these two front darts to match the upper bodice. Not only that, but I'm also going to show you how to create a very, very simple neckline as well to come with this block. We have a few requirements, which we're then going to basically produce in the lab very shortly. So we have like waist shaping, what fit we need, front and back dart iterations, and also what purchase we need. But I'm going to show you how to do that in the lab. So let's just go straight on to the lab. You can do that by clicking this button, but I want to keep this page open just so we can kind of come back and refer to this page again. There we go. So let's just go to the lab. And here, if you're new to Pattern Lab, then you probably haven't you haven't created your own account, which is completely free, and you probably haven't created a profile. But to do that, simply go to the Profiles page, and in here you can watch our video tutorial that shows you how to measure various key parts of the body to actually produce these blocks. This is how you produce your accurately fitting, unique, or custom fitting basic blocks. Okay, so you can just create a new profile, you can name it what you want, change centimeters or inches, and obviously create your block. However, I've already done this because I've been using Pattern Lab for quite a while now. So I'm just going to go ahead and select a profile that I already have, which is 3C Francesca. This is our sample size that we use for all of our tutorials. You can also select a standard size by clicking that little box. So just click here. It will bring up our standard size chart, and you can switch between the mature women or young women. The only difference is the waist is slightly different, slightly larger for mature women and slightly smaller for younger women. And here you can see we have our different international sizes and then bust, waist and hip. You can also click the Show More button, and this will expand the chart to give you all of the measurements that we use to draft our blocks and all the measurements for each various size. Okay, UK 4 to 24. For this block I would probably, because it's quite close fitting, I would probably stick within the 4 to 16 range. But let's just click 10 for a UK standard 10. Okay, so this is how you select a UK standard size. Otherwise, just go to select your profile, and as you can see they just swap over. Okay, so first of all we're going to produce our bodice block, which is the upper half of this block here. I'm just going to click on bodice. Okay, once we have our profile selected, click bodice. As you can see, it starts to preview in this little pane on the right, so you can see it build as you go. Next we're going to go to the fit, and we're going to go for waist shaping. Okay, so here this is the requirements. Okay, so you have bodice block, waist shaping, yes, custom fit. Now the bust ease is 6.81% and the waist ease is 4% of waist. Okay, so these are all the requirements you need to draft this block. So we go waist shaping, yes, choose a fit. We're not going to go for automatic, we're going to go for custom, and in here we're going to put in 6.81 and here we're going to put in 4. Now at the moment you can see that this is centimeters, so this is not a percentage, this is the cm that we're adding to our block or to create our fit. And fit is essentially, you can read a little bit more about it here and what it actually does. But fit is essentially how much ease is added to your block. So if you imagine your skin or your body is here, the distance between your body and the actual block is how much ease is added to your block on the bust and the waist. So we're using 6.81% and 4. As I said, this is cm. Eventually we'll have a percentage value here as well, so you can simply just select percentage, and then you can just put in 6.81%. But for this block I'm just going to keep it as these because it's the tutorial. But just make sure you click percentage, and then add those values based on the requirements. Anyway, we're then going to click next, and this brings us to the front of our block. So once again, look at your requirements. Front, no seam. You can use classic, double or princess. So I'm going to go for no seam because essentially our block does not have a seam at the front here. And I'm going to go for the double because in our sample we actually have a dart at the top and we have a dart at the bottom. Okay, so a nice clean look. So I would recommend using double, classic and princess just because the darts here actually go in, they match up with your skirt block. You see, you have a nice smooth line that goes between the two, so it makes the design quite clean. However, you can use the French, straight, any one of these iterations and it will still work. Okay, but let's go for the double and let's click next. As you can see, your pattern changes on the side here. So for the back, because let's say we wanted to have a neckline that was actually quite close to the neck, obviously she wouldn't be able to put her head through the hole. So we would need some kind of opening, whether it be on the shoulder or on the back. Now to keep things simple, I'm going to go for a seam on the back. Okay, just so that we can open that and have that close-fitting neckline. With this one, we actually have a wide neck, so we probably wouldn't have to have much, we wouldn't have to have a back seam. We could just have a side seam, or sorry, a side opening, okay? But anyway, let's keep things simple. I'm going to click seam for the back, so we're going to put a zip in the back of our block. And we can select any one of these. So if you maybe selected princess on the first, on the front, you can then select it on the back here to keep things, yeah, the same. Otherwise, let's go for the mid-shoulder. This is nice and simple, and it's got the same lines as the dress as well. And I'm going to click Next. Now, the sleeve, it comes as part of your torso or bodice block. It comes included. And the reason why is because obviously this sleeve will fit this armhole. This is a unique block. This is a unique sleeve that fits this block. Okay, so it's always a good idea to download your bodice and your sleeve and save it in the same location so you have access to it later. So perhaps later on you want to create a new sleeve for this particular dress. You already have that pattern which you can then amend with one of our other tutorials. So save these together at all times. Also recommend keeping it as sleeve cap ease as 2cm. You can change this if you want to, and it has a little bit of information about sleeve cap ease, and you can read more with these little read more buttons. We're then going to click Next, so just have this selected, and 2cm is fine. We're then going to go to the purchase or download screen, okay, and tells you a little bit more about seam allowances here and what they actually do and why we use them. But because we're doing this tutorial in Adobe Illustrator, we're going to be digitally pattern cutting these or amending these to create our new design in Adobe Illustrator. We don't actually need seam allowance, so I'm not going to worry about this. Otherwise, if for example you're doing this the manual way, so you're going to manually pattern cut using paper, pencil and maybe a ruler or Pattern Master, you can download it as a PDF pattern, which you can then print out on either A0 or A4 or US letter, whatever you decide. Essentially, if you do that, then seam allowance will be included on your block because we treat it as a finished pattern. So I would just say just go none. So if you're going to download as a PDF, just click no seam allowance. As you can see, it changes, and that way you know that you're using the absolute lines or the cutting lines of the block. Anyway, as I said, we're doing this in Adobe Illustrator, so we're going to download the digital version of this pattern, and it shows you a little bit more, or tells you a little bit more about what these two formats are and what they do. There we go. I'm just going to click Add to Cart. Okay, so we now have our bodice block in our checkout. Next, we want to go and get the skirt version. Okay, so we've done our top with all our requirements. Next, we're going to do the lower half of the skirt with the same requirements. So let's go to skirts, and then here I'm going to select the basic skirt. Okay, and next we're going to go for fit, and the fit is going to be custom once again. And if you go to your requirements, it'll say the waist is 4% of the waist ease. Okay, so this is 4%, and this is the hip is also 4%. What is very important here if you're using your own eases, because you can change these and get a different fit each time, is that you always make sure that the waist is the same for both the bodice and the skirt block. Okay, that's the way they match or they meet. Okay, they match, they have the same distance or the same waist circumference for both. So let's just click custom, and then here once again this should be a percentage, but we're not doing that because we haven't got that functionality just yet. We're going to go 4 and then 4 for the hip. Okay, so we have 4% for the waist and 4% for the hip. Next we're going to go to length, and then here it's completely up to you. Maybe you want a thigh length version of this dress, then you can do a thigh length version. We've created a knee length version, and you can also do a floor length. So I'm just going to click floor knee for now, and then click next. You can also add your custom skirt length here, whatever you decide. Click next. And now we're going to choose the dart iterations for the front of our skirt block. As you can see, it's building. So first of all, I'm going to go no seam on the front of our block. Once again, requirements, front, no seam. So no seam, and we're going to go for the single dart option, okay, on the front. That way, we know that these darts will eventually match up. Okay, so we have one dart on the front. And we're just going to click next, and then we have the back of our block. Now because we have an opening on our dress at the back, I'm going to keep it consistent and go for a back seam. And then here we have some more options, and I'm going to click single dart, okay, because on the back of our block, let's have a look. So here you can see we have the back dart, and we have that back dart on the skirt as well. And then there it is, there's our seam down the back where we can add a zip, or we can put it in the side. Okay, so we're going to go for seam and then single dart and click next. Okay, here we do not need a waistband because this is not a separate skirt, it's going to be joined onto the bodice. So I'm just going to click no waistband, and then we're going to go to the download or purchase screen. Once again, seam allowance, we're going to If we're doing the PDF download, keep that at 0 seam allowance. If we're doing the ePattern download, we don't need to worry about seam allowance, and I'm just going to add that block to our cart. There we go. So now we should have 2 patterns in our cart. Now, just so you're aware, yeah, this is a purchase, so it's $15.98, but these blocks independently, they can be altered and changed. You can change the dart iterations, you can change the styling. Essentially, you're buying a bodice block, which you can then adjust and amend your measurements and also your dart iterations. Okay, so these aren't just one-off products, you can customize them to do a range of different blocks and tutorials. Let's just click checkout. Okay, because I'm an admin, obviously no payment is required, but at this point you shouldn't see that. All you will see is confirm order, and it gives you a list of basically all of the attributes that go into constructing your block. Okay, so for example, custom eases, bust ease, this would be a percentage, and so would this, and same with the hip, etc. And obviously we have the skirt as well. So you can just check these off against your requirements to make sure that they're correct. And once you're happy, just click I've read and agreed to terms and conditions. It's a good thing to actually read these because most of our blocks are royalty free. However, there's some rules that apply when it comes to the commercial use of our patterns. So just please read these to make sure that you're fully aware when it comes to the commercial use of our patterns. And just click confirm. So this will then take you to our PayPal payment gateway. So obviously fill in your details, obviously make your purchase, and then you'll be directed to this screen, which is thank you for your purchase. It gives you your order number, and also obviously the price, the date, and you can view your invoice or go to all of your other orders if you're a registered member. And here are your blocks. Okay, so we have a few here. We have the bodice and we have the set-in sleeve. These are 2 separate items, although eventually these will be combined into one, so you'll have only one preview and download. And you also have your basic skirt. So at this point we're just going to check our blocks. So click preview and download. And here you have our lovely bodice block for 3C Francesca profile, and it gives you all, once again, the information that's associated with your block. If for some reason this doesn't look quite right, or it doesn't look very proportionate, and possibly you've entered some incorrect measurements or they're not quite right, and you need to go back and revise them, we have a troubleshooting guide that shows you what measurements go into producing your block and how to amend them to create a better fitting block. So have a look at these, and then you can also go and edit your measurements using this button. But I'm very happy with this block because I've used it a number of times, so I'm just going to click download. So let's go to the desktop and let's create a folder and call it 3C Francesca, that's the name of our profile, and then we're going to have, let's say, 2-piece dress. That's our folder name. Let's click, oh, hang on a minute. Sorry, let's click new folder. Let's name our folder 3C Francesca 2-piece dress so we know what we're working with here. Create, and then within that, let's call it 2-piece dress and then bodice, okay? Because this is essentially the bodice block that we are downloading, okay? But it is for this style. Just click save, and there it goes, it's downloading. Okay, so next I'm going to close the bodice block, and I'm going to go to my sleeve block. Once again, we're going to preview it, and you can preview this, you can troubleshoot, you can also edit your measurements, but I'm going to click download. I'm going to save it with the same name, but this time I'm going to call it sleeve. Okay, save that, close, and then next we go on to our skirt. So preview and download. Here's our skirt, looking really nice. Once again, I know this block is perfect. So, but if not, you can always go back. You can troubleshoot, and you can also edit your measurements. So I'm going to click download, and save this in the same folder with the same name, except this time put skirt. Click save. So we now have our 3 patterns, okay, which is perfect. Essentially we only need 2, the bodice and the skirt for this block, because we don't actually have sleeves, but it's good once again to keep your sleeve with that block in case you want to add sleeves later. Okay, so we're pretty much ready to navigate away from the lab and start drafting our patterns in Adobe Illustrator. However, there's one more thing we need to do, which is the download. So these downloads, which appear on every single tutorial page, we have the cutting table. And the cutting table is essentially a space that we've created in Adobe Illustrator, or a file that opens up, and it gives you a huge area for where you can paste your patterns and start cutting and adjusting them. It also has a key which gives you elements you can add to the finished block, such as notches, grain lines, etc., and fold lines. And you also have the PDF pattern pack, and the PDF pattern pack is essentially you would copy and paste your finished pattern onto these templates, whatever one you chose, US letter or A4, A3, etc. And you can add seam allowance. And then essentially from that you can save it as a PDF or print it. And that will allow you to print it on any one of these paper formats. Okay. Anyway, so first of all, let's just click cutting table. I'm going to download that to the same folder, and this is a zip file. So let's just click save. And these are all completely free. Same with the PDF pattern pack. I'm going to save that in the same folder. Click save. Perfect. And there they all are. So once those are downloaded, I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm just going to go to my folder, which is here. I'm going to double click and open it. And then in here you can see we have our bodice, our skirt, our sleeve, and we have the cutting table and PDF print template. So first of all, I'm just going to unzip the cutting table, unzip the PDF print templates. We can get rid of these now. If you're a Mac user, just double clicking will open those. If you're Windows, possibly you'll have to download WinZip or 7-zip to extract those. But anyway, we've opened these up. Now we have access to these files. I'm just going to double click on the cutting table. And I'm going to open up this file. It's an Adobe Illustrator file. I'm just going to double click on that. There we go, and this is our cutting table. So let's just zoom out a little bit. So you can see you have a huge space on which to paste your patterns and obviously manipulate them, adjust them, and pattern cut them. We also have this key on the left-hand side, and this, as I mentioned before, you have notches, fold lines, grain lines, etc. Elements you can add to your block to perfect them or finish them off. This just keeps them nice and consistent. Okay, so a few little navigation tools here. So if you hold down the space key on your keyboard, you can then click and drag, and this allows you to move around the page. Really helpful when it comes to, well, just any navigation really. You can also hit Command or Control on your keyboard and then hit plus to zoom in, and minus to zoom out. So in combination, they're very powerful tools. Okay? Great. So what we're going to do is first we're going to basically grab those patterns and pull them into this workspace, this cutting table. Okay, so I'm going to click File, Open, and then go to the bodice, and I'm also going to get the skirt as well. I'm not going to worry about the sleeve because we're not using that in this tutorial, and I'm going to click Open. And here we go. Okay, so as you can see, let's zoom out. We have our lovely knee-length skirt block, and we also have our bodice block as well. Okay, perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my big selection tool over here on the left hand side. I'm just going to click and drag over the whole of those two patterns. I'm going to go Edit, Copy. I'm going to go to my cutting table. I'm going to go Edit, Paste. And there's our upper block, or our bodice block. Next we go to the the skirt. Big selection tool, click and drag over the whole area. Just go Edit, Copy. Go to the cutting table. And then go Edit, Paste. Lovely, and there's our skirt block, and as you can see, they're going to match up nicely. Okay, so now we have our two blocks. At the moment, so we can close these down. Let's just go back to these, close. Let's keep those as they were, close. So we've got them saved if we want to do this adjustment again. So we have our two blocks, which is looking fantastic. Okay, so first of all, they're a little bit faint, so I'm going to make them a little bit darker and clean these up a little bit, get rid of some of this text so we can actually use these as pattern pieces. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my small selection tool, or the direct selection tool, this little one on the left here. I'm going to click it. I'm then going to highlight this block. I'm going to click, I'm going to hold down my shift key, click the next block. The shift key simply queues up the selection. Okay, if I were just to click and then click, we would lose it. So click, hold down shift key, click to queue up the selection. Same with these two skirt blocks. And then, hang on a minute, let's just make this correct size. There we go. And then on the right hand side here, as you can see, we have this little thing called stroke. If you can't find it, go to Window, have a look down, then go Stroke, and that will add it to this little pane. We're going to go to the weight, and we're going to adjust this and bring this up to 2 points, okay, just so you can see it. See how that's much clearer now? Perfect. Next, so without losing our selection, so without clicking off, we're going to keep them selected. We're then going to go to the fill, and we're going to remove that fill simply by selecting, okay, by selecting this fill color here. I can then go None, and that just simply means that we can click inside it and it won't select. So we have to now click the outside of our lines. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to remove some of the elements from within inside this. Now, all of the patterns come grouped, so if we go to our big selection tool and click on this block here, as you can see, all of these elements are grouped, so it moves around as one piece, which is great. But if we want to remove these elements and just have the outline, we need to essentially ungroup. So I'm going to just select all of these pieces now. So big selection tool, click and drag, I'm going to go Object and then Ungroup. And we're ungrouping everything at the same time to make it quicker. Okay, so now all these elements are completely individual to select. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take this information, the center back, we can take the bust line, we can take the grain line as well. And I'm just simply selecting, holding down my shift key to queue up or to add to my selection. There we go. I'm just going to go Object, Group, and then pull that over to the right hand side. And by doing that, you just simply go to your big selection tool, click, and then drag. Hold down the shift key, we'll lock it. Okay, keep it in a nice straight line. Same with the front. I'm going to big selection tool, I'm going to select, hold down my shift key, select, select. There we go. Same with the bust line. We can probably move the bust point as well. This information. And note, we're just leaving our bust line on there so we have it marked. I'm just going to go Object, Group, and then click and drag and just move that over to the side. Okay, so we want to retain this information because we want to add it later, but let's just leave it off for now so we've got a nice clean block to work with. Same with the skirt block. I'm just going to select the item, hold down the shift key, select, select, get all this information. I'm then going to go Object, Group, drag it off to one side. I'm going to select this, hold down the shift key, queue them up. There we go. Object, Group, oops, not ungroup, sorry, Group, and then move that over to the side. Okay, so now we have our nice clean blocks, which is looking lovely. In fact, if you want, we can just get this right out of the way. We have loads of space to work with here. You see, it's huge. So let's just move that out of the way. Okay, let's go back to our blocks. Okay, so we're pretty much now ready to start our pattern cutting. Well, first of all, let's just align. Oh, hang on, there's one thing we forgot to do. So these aren't grouped. As you can see, the notches here are separate to the actual block. So if I were to move this block now, we'd lose our information. So we must ensure that now we've removed that information, go to our big selection tool, click and drag over all the elements for this block, and go Object, Group. Same with this one. Make sure all the elements are selected. Object, Group. Same for the skirt. There's nothing on the skirt, that's fine. Excuse me. And next we're just going to line these up. So as you can see now, we can move these around and we're not going to lose any information. So yeah, as I said, I'm just going to line this up with the skirt block. So I'm going to get my big selection tool, click and drag over these two elements, and then up here we have some alignment options. And I'm going to go right align. And same for this one, I'm going to go left align. But that's already aligned, so that's fine. So as you can see, these are now starting to match up really beautifully. You can see that the waist is pretty much matching. Okay, so to start, let's say, drafting your pattern, we need to basically align these darts, that when we actually sew the bodice and the skirt together, these darts can be in the same position. Okay, so we get a nice clean line from the bodice through to the skirt. Okay, so really simple. To do this, first of all, let's just zoom into the area of the waistline. Also, I brought these blocks a little bit further up, okay, just so they're kind of they're closer together. And also, as I said, we've aligned the bodice and the skirt. Okay, and you can simply do that just by going to your big selection tool, click on the two blocks, or sorry, click and drag over the two blocks, and then just click the align tool. Okay, so just to show you that, just align. Same with this one. Select the two blocks with the big selection tool, and then align. Okay, so let's zoom in on that waistline. So first of all, I want to draw some guidelines. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to pick up my small selection tool. I'm going to click on my guideline just to pick up the attributes of that line. I'm going to go to my line tool just here. If you can't see it, it might be one of these. For example, it might be the arc tool. Just click and hold until you find the line segment tool. You can also press L on your keyboard. So I'm going to draw some guidelines. I'm going to go from the center front to the side seam. That's not the right one, sorry. Let's go to the line tool. I'm going to click and drag from the center front to the side seam of the front of my bodice. I'm going to do the same for the skirt, center front to the side seam. I'm going to do the same for the back. So the back bodice, the center back to the side seam, and the center back of the skirt to the side seam. Okay, so we have our guidelines in place. Lovely. Okay, next what we're going to do is we're going to make some measurements. Actually no, first of all let's just cut our waistline of our skirt. Okay, so we're going to separate this dart from this waist shaping here. So I'm going to get my small selection tool, I'm going to click on the outline of my block. Hang on, first of all. Okay, I'm going to click on the outline of my block with my small selection tool. I'm going to use the scissor tool, which is here. As I said, it could be one of these three. Just click and hold to find the scissor tool. I'm just going to cut at this point, this point, this point, and this point. I'm going to go to my small selection tool. I'm going to select that item, see how it's been separated from the rest of the pattern, and I'm going to hit delete or backspace on my keyboard more than once, okay? Hit it a few times. And I'm going to go along, small selection tool, select the other upper line, and delete. Okay, so we've removed our waist shaping from the front of our skirt block. And do the same for the back here. I'm going to select my block with the small selection tool. I'm going to go to the scissor tool, and I'm going to cut, not at this point here, but actually where the line, the guideline intersects the dart. Same with this point. Here, oops, wrong one. Make sure your block is selected and not the line. And then just get the scissor tool, cut, and then cut. Let's get the small selection tool. We're going to remove this upper line, see how it's been separated. Hit backspace a few times, and backspace a few times. Okay, perfect. This is looking lovely. Okay, so next we're going to find the distance from the center front where this dart leg appears. Okay, we're going to find the distance from this point to this point. To do that, very simple. We're going to go to our line tool. I'm going to click on this point and drag. So click and hold and drag until you get to the center front. As you can see, the little grey box says it's 7.12 centimeters. Otherwise, you can go to Window and then go to, where is it? Document Info. And that will bring this little dialog box up on the right hand panel here. And if you just go to the little burger menu and then just make sure you display objects, and it will show you that line is 7.124 centimeters, which is perfect. Okay, so that is 7.124 cm. I'm just going to get a point, so let's go all the way over to our key, which is up here. I'm just going to get my big selection tool, click on that point, go edit, copy. Let's go back to where we were before, and I'm just going to go edit, paste. I'm going to paste that point in. Next, I'm just going to drag it to the center of that point. So big selection tool, get the center of that point and mark it on the center front of the waist skirt. So once you found your point, just check the line measurement, 7.12. I'm going to click this point, hit enter on my keyboard, and go minus 7.12, tab down, and vertical we're going to go 0. Okay, so let's just preview that. And what it does is it basically moves the point 7.12 cm to the left. If we were to put in plus 7.12, you would see the point move to the right. Okay, so we want to use minus to go to the left and positive to go to the right. And then just click OK. Great. Next we want this point to appear on this line. Okay, so to do that we go to our rotation tool. If for some reason you see the reflect tool, just click and hold until you find the rotate tool. Click on this point, and we know that this is 7.2 cm. So if we rotate around that point, we know that it's always going to be 7.12 cm away. So let's just move that to the line. And this is essentially where our dart is going to be placed. Okay. Get your big selection tool, click on your dart, click and drag it away. There we go. And then just click on that little point. Let's zoom in. Just get my big selection tool, click on that point and move it to the center point of this circle or your point. Okay, that's perfect. We can also get rid, small selection tool, we can get rid of this measure line now. We don't need it anymore. And next what we're going to do is we're going to measure the other side of our bodice panel. Okay, we're going to measure from this point to this point. And it's important that we measure from the grey line, not this bottom edge here. So let's really zoom in so it doesn't stick. And let's get the line tool, and let's click and drag all the way across to the side seam. And as you can see, it's 11.36 centimeters in the grey box. But we can also see it here as well, so 11.35. Perfect. Okay, so next I'm going to get my big selection tool. I'm going to click on my point. I'm going to go Control C to copy and Control V on my keyboard to paste. And I'm just simply going to mark that point at the other dart leg. Next, big selection tool, click on that point, hit the enter key on your keyboard, and then we're going to go, oh, what was it again? Sorry, hang on. The line was 11.35. So I'm going to get big selection tool, click on that point, hit the enter key, minus 11.35, because we're going backwards. Sorry, we're going to the left, not to the right, so it's a minus. I'm going to hit copy. And then once again, we need to rotate this around this point until it meets that line. Go to your rotation tool, click on this point, rotate it up until the center of it meets that line. Okay, perfect. Alright, next what we're going to do, we're going to get our small selection tool. I'm going to click on this line here, which exposes that point. You see the little white point there? So I'm going to click on the line, expose the white point, and then just drag it until it meets the center of that point that we just marked. Okay, we can also bring our guideline in, so small selection tool, click on the endpoint, just drag it in. And we can now get rid of these circle points. So just get small selection tool, click on it, and then hit backspace a few times. And we can also get rid of this line here. Okay, great. So now essentially this length here is the same as the one up top, and this length here is the same as the bodice. And our dart, we have not actually altered the dart in terms of how much distribution we have on the front, which means we're going to have a nice clean front. For example, if we made the dart the same width as this, we'd have a lot more material taken in, and we'd have a bit of bagginess at the very end of this dart. So this is really helpful when it comes to maintaining a nice smooth clean fit over the body, as you would expect from the skirt block alone. Okay, so next we're going to do the back, and we'll do exactly the same process. So let's zoom in. Going to get my line tool. I'm going to click at this point, drag until we get to the grey line, and this might be tricky. We might need to zoom in a little bit. Let's go to the line tool, click on the centre back, and then along that grey line until we meet the dart leg, and that is 8.2 cm. Okay, you see how I'm going to the grey line intersection and not the bottom of that point. Let's just check. That is 8.195, which is perfect. Okay, so once again I'm going to copy in and paste in my point, just Control V, and then I'm going to place that with my big selection tool. Just click the centre of that and drag it until we get to the centre back of our skirt. Let's zoom out a little bit. There we go. And check the distance of that line. 8.195. Big selection tool, click on this point, and then type 8.195. Nothing on the vertical, and we can just preview that. There we go, and just hit OK. Next, we're going to go to our rotation tool, as we did before. Click on that point, rotate it up, so we know that the distance between these 2 points is 8.9. However, it is on the grey line. And this basically marks, let's get rid of that line, this basically marks where this dart leg needs to be on the back, on the back of the skirt. So I'm going to go to my big selection tool, I'm going to click on this dart, drag it away, go to the point of that dart, click, and then drag it until it meets the center point of the point that we marked. Okay, lovely. Next, I'm going to get my line tool, zoom in, I'm going to measure from this point all the way across the side seam, and that is 11.88. We can check it in the Pathfinder, sorry, in document info, 11.87, which is great. Going to get my point, so big selection tool, click on the point, hit Control C on the keyboard, Control V to paste, get my big selection tool, click on the center, and then drag it over till that dart leg. And then let's find out what that length was, 11.87. Big selection tool, click on my point, 11.87. Sorry, hang on, I'm speeding up. Select this point with the big selection tool, hit enter on your keyboard, and then type in 11.8. Wait, hang on, is that correct? Let's just check. Yep, 11.87. Click the point, hit the enter key, 11.87, 0 vertically, and then we can preview that, and there it is. Let's hit OK, go to our rotation tool, click on the rotation point, click, and then just move it up. And unfortunately we need that line to go through because we can't see where it's fitting. So small selection tool, click on the line, find the point, and then just drag it through, not above or below, but drag it through that line to about there. Next, big selection tool, click on our point, go to rotation tool, click on that dart leg, and then rotate it down so we know that that is 11.8 centimeters away. And then finally, we're going to get our small selection tool, click on the line of our block, find the point, click and drag until it's at the center of the point that we've just marked. And we can also bring our guideline in, small selection tool, click on the point and just bring it back in. And we can get rid of this, and this, and this. Great, okay, so that's now your back block has been matched up with your, your back skirt block has matched up with your back bodice block, which is great. So these lines should essentially be the same, and this line should be the same, and this, and this, and this, and this one, which is fantastic. Okay, so next we need to add some waist shaping to this lower skirt block. So if we were going to attach it to here, obviously this is a nice curved seam, which will give you a lovely finish at your waist, whereas this one isn't. So we're going to add that in now. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go select all, so I'm selecting everything here, and I'm going to go object and then lock selection. And what this does is it means I cannot select anything. I'm using this as a template. So next what we're going to do is I'm going to go to my rectangle tool. So if you see any of these, just click and hold and click rectangle tool. And then from this point here, I'm going to click and drag to create my rectangle. Now if you look at where the points are going, I want one to be in line there, and I want one to be in line with the bottom. We can change these later, it's not a big deal. There we go. Perfect. Well, not quite perfect, but still. Also, I want to make this a guideline. So once I've got it selected, go to your eyedropper tool, which might be either the measure tool. Just click and hold, eyedropper tool, and then click that guideline. And what that does is it takes up the attributes of that guideline and applies it to the one that's been selected. So get my small selection tool, click on this point, drag it until we meet the side seam there. Same with this one, just drag it until we meet the side seam. Drag this point till we meet the dart point, and this is simply we're drawing a template of the right side of our upper skirt panel. I'm going to do exactly the same for the opposite side. Doesn't matter where I draw it really. Just keep it in line. There we go. Small selection tool, click and drag, and then click and drag. So we now have two templates we've created. Next, get your big selection tool just here, and then click on this template panel. Go to the rotate tool, and what we'll do is we're just going to click it at that dart point, and then we're going to just close it. Okay, it's essentially like slashing and spreading, or slashing and closing. So we've now closed that dart. Okay, and so it shows you if you were to close this dart, the top edge of your block would have that little notch in it. Okay, it would have that little sort of like dip, which is not going to be very good. I'll do the same for the front. Just get my big selection tool, click on that template, go to the rotate tool, click, and then rotate that close. Okay, so once again, this is the curve we're going to have, which is not really a curve. Okay, so now we're going to draw our curve in, or create our waist shaping. I'm going to go to the pen tool, like that, and I'm just going to click on this point, and then this point. Also, I'm going to go to my eyedropper tool here, and I'm just going to select, there we go, I'm going to get the attributes from our pattern, so it's a little bit bolder. Okay, so once we have this line selected, I'm going to go to my pen tool here, click and hold, go down to anchor point tool, release, and then click and drag. Okay, and you see this bezier, that's what we call a bezier, this little handle. Essentially, this allows you to curve your line. So by moving the mouse close to the point, it gets more acute. Moving it further away, it gets more obtuse. And then swinging it around creates a different curve. Anyway, so we're going to take this line along this line here, and we're going to just have that bezier point just there, okay, where the dart leg meets that grade guideline. Next, with the opposite side, I'm going to click and drag, let go, and then click this point. You can manipulate it individually. And I'm going to use that guideline here just to move it along that point. And I'm going to go roughly 2/3 of the way from this point to this point. You see how that's almost 1, 2, 3, 2/3. You can measure this, but I'm just going to do it by eye for now. There we go. Okay, so now this is the new shape of our waist for the back of our skirt, which is looking lovely, but we want to basically rotate this panel back so we have it on the actual block. And to do that, what we're going to do is get our small selection tool, click on our template, which is here, isolate that little point, click and drag, and we're just going to move it up through, not to the left or right, but up through that line until it intersects our waistline. Okay, and then small selection tool, click on that line, go to the cut tool, which is here, and then just cut where it intersects, like so. Next, get our big selection tool, and we're going to just basically click and drag over these two elements. So we have the template and we have our new waist. I'm just going to go to the rotation tool. I'm going to click on this point, and then I'm just going to rotate that out until it falls back to its original position. Okay, you see how that's now, the points are now in their original location. And small selection tool, click off, click on my template, and I can now delete this template. And there you can see we've got our new shaping. Do exactly the same to the front. Going to get my click and hold pen tool. I'm going to go from this point to this point. I'm then going to get my eyedropper, just get that pattern line, the elements or attributes from it. Click off, and then go to our pen tool, click and hold, anchor point tool, and then here we're going to click and drag. There we go. Click, and then we're just going to go to this point. And then once again, we're going to click and drag, and we're going to go 2/3 along this grey line. It's a little bit hard to see, so let's just zoom in a little bit, give yourself a bit of space. So from this point here, we're going to click and drag until it's about 2/3 along that line. Okay, so we have like one, so about 1, 2, a little bit further perhaps. There we go. So 2/3, the distance from this point to this point, is our bezier. Okay. Lovely. Alright, so once again, we're going to get our small selection tool. We're going to highlight or select our template. We're going to locate that point at the top. There, just going to click and drag until it intersects that new waistline and it goes through that dart leg. So if it was here originally, just click and drag through, and then small selection tool, click on your line, go to the cut tool, and then cut. Oops, not quite on point there. Keep it as accurate as you can. Click to cut. Go to your big selection tool, click and drag over these two elements, which is your template and your new waist shaping. Go to the rotation tool, click on the dart point, and then there we go, move that back into position. All the points are matched up, which is great. Small selection tool, click, and then just delete. Okay, so perfect. We now have some waist shaping on our skirt block, which is great. It's going to match up with this one as well. Only problem is that our dart legs don't actually match or meet, but we can't actually select them because we've locked them. So now we're going to go to Object and then Unlock All, and that will unlock everything that we locked before. Okay, so now these lines are now editable. So go to your small selection tool, click on the line, locate the point, click and drag, locate the line, locate the point, click and drag. There we go. And then same for the front, locate the line, click the point and drag it up to meet. Drag the point up to meet it. Okay, lovely. So now we can basically get rid of our guidelines because we don't need them anymore. Okay, just get your small selection tool, click on the line, hit backspace a few times, backspace, select the line, backspace, select the line, backspace. Fantastic. Okay, next what we're going to do is, because these lines are all separate, we want to join them up so we have one nice united block like it is here. You see how they're separate? We're going to zoom in. We're going to go to our small selection tool. I'm going to click and drag over those 2 points, right click, join. Click and drag, right click, join. Click and drag, right click, join. Same for here as well. There's probably, let's have a look. There are 2 points here. So essentially we want to basically right click and go average. We want to average those 2 points together. There we go. So they're overlapping and then we can join them. If we didn't, then we'd have essentially, well, I'll show you. Right click, join. Let's zoom in. You see here we have 2 separate little points, which is not great. So here what we want to do is click and drag, right click, average. That's it. And then right click, join. And then we just have 1 point, which is great. Okay, it's the same for the front block. We need to unite these lines. Just going to go small selection tool, click and drag. Let's just average that just to be sure. Okay, join. Click and drag, right click, join. Click and drag. Let's go average. It looks like there's 2. Click OK. Join. Click and drag. Average. Both. OK. And then join. Okay, fantastic. So that should be 1 block now, as you can see, which is perfect. Same with the upper blocks, all 1 block, which is great. Okay, so that is essentially, that's it really, when it comes to, let's say, creating a 2-piece dress from your skirt and your bodice blocks. We can now add extra design elements like a different neckline and also this split that you can see on the first garment. So now we're going to basically start constructing this split, and I'm just going to show you how to create this very simple neckline. Okay, so now we're going to add a vent to the front of your dress. Okay, so very, very simple. You can also do this to the back of your dress. It's completely up to you. It depends which side you work with. But we're going to work with, this is our front bodice, so this is the front of our skirt. We're going to work with this panel. So I'm just going to separate this from the rest of the block. Actually, let's leave it in place. And first of all, I'm just going to get my big selection tool. I'm going to select this block. I'm going to right click and go transform, reflect, and then hit vertical. We're reflecting it across the vertical axis, and I'm going to hit copy. All that does is simply produce a left and a right front dress panel, because we're going to basically amend these, make them slightly different patterns. Okay. Okay. So first of all, what we're going to do is we'll make some decisions. Okay. So depending on how long you want your slit to be or your vent to be, so I have measured from the very base of the hem of my dress, so from the knee up. About, I'm using 30 centimeters. It's completely up to you, and this would be basically where my vent starts. Okay, so I'm going to go 30 centimeters from this point to here. That will be the opening of the front of my skirt. You can also measure down from the waist. It's completely up to you. Also, I'm going to use a vent width of about 4 centimeters, so we've got a nice bit of material to play around with on the inside. So first one, I'm going to go to my rectangle tool. If you click, if any one of these are displayed, just simply click and hold, and then go to rectangle tool. Next, I'm going to position my little cursor just on the front of my skirt block. I'm going to click, and this should bring up the rectangle dialog box. And I'm going to go for, so I want the width of my vent to be 4 cm, and I want the length of it to be 30 centimeters. I'm just going to click OK. And that will produce my vent. All I have to do simply now is go to my large selection tool. I'm going to click and drag it to line it up with the base of my skirt pattern, like so. Also, I'm going to turn this into a guideline because it's not a pattern piece just yet. So I'm going to go to the top of my page, I'm going to go to my eyedropper tool, and I'm going to click on the guideline to get the attributes of that line. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the base of my skirt. I'm going to get another rectangle, and I'm going to click in this corner just here, and I'm going to go, let's do 30 cm again, length, and 4 cm height. The length can be variable, we're going to change this. Click OK. Okay, perfect. So next we have our rectangle, but obviously these two don't line up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my small selection tool. I'm going to click and drag just that end there. Okay, I'm going to click and drag. If you hold down the shift key, it'll lock it. There you go, to the horizontal. I'm just going to click and drag it so it matches my other pattern piece here. Okay, so next what we're going to do is I'm going to get this. I'm going to get my small selection tool. I'm going to click and drag over this little point here. I'm going to hit the Enter key. I'm going to put 0 in the horizontal, and I'm going to put vertical 2.5 down, and hit OK. Perfect. Okay, next what we're going to do is I'm going to go and click small selection tool, click on this guide again. So I'm going to click on the outline. I'm going to find that point in the little corner there, and I'm going to hit the Enter key, and I'm going to go 0, -4. Okay, so 0 horizontal, -4 upwards. Click OK. Fantastic. Okay, so next what we're going to do is I'm going to get my big selection tool. I'm going to click and drag this up into my pattern, okay? And then with my small selection tool, I'm going to click on the outline, find that point, click and drag it in so it meets our previously marked point, okay? Excellent. Okay, so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my big selection tool. I'm going to click on this panel here. I'm going to right click and then go transform, reflect, and hit vertical and then copy. And there's my piece. I'm just going to move that out until it's in line with the other similar panel piece. Okay, excellent. Next what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this lower panel here, or this lower guideline. I'm going to click on it with my big selection tool, and I'm going to transform and then reflect, and I'm going to reflect it across the horizontal axis, and I'm going to hit copy. I'm just going to move this down until it's in line with the existing panel. Great, so now I have my guidelines when it comes to the front vent of my skirt. I'm going to get my big selection tool, I'm going to click and drag over these guidelines, and I'm going to go to Object and then Lock, Selection. That means I can't actually edit them at all, which is perfect. So next I'm actually going to start to translate or use this as a template to alter the front of my skirt block. Okay, so I'm going to use my small selection tool, I'm going to click on the outline, I'm going to go to the plus anchor point tool, and I'm going to add a point just where this guideline intersects the main pattern. I'm going to click, and then I'm going to add maybe 3 more just down that line, just by clicking. You can also remove these if you need to, just by clicking and holding, and then delete anchor point tool. Next I'm going to go to my small selection tool, just here. I'm going to click on this point, I'm going to drag it over to match this point. Same with this one. So I'm just basically moving these points around to trace that underlying pattern. And then instead of moving the points here, well, I could move the point, or if I small selection tool, select the bottom line, I can click and just drag that line down until those points match. Okay. You can also hold down the shift key, which will lock it to your vertical. There we go. Alright, perfect. So now I've drawn the outline of my pattern, which is perfect. Now I'm going to put in some guidelines and some fold lines. Okay. So first of all, let's just go up to our key at the top here. I'm just going to select the fold line. Okay. This basically pulls up the attributes for that fold line. Let's just go back down to our block. I'm going to go to my line tool, and I'm going to click and drag at this point all the way down, just following that template. I'm going to click off. I'm going to get another line tool. I'm going to click and drag from these 2 points. Perfect. Next, I'm going to get my guideline. So I'm going to click. Sorry, let's go back up to our key. I'm going to click on the guideline to get the attributes of that line. And I'm going to get another line tool, and I'm going to click and drag from here to here. I'm going to click off, get my line tool again, click and drag, click off, go to my line tool again, and then click and drag to those 2 points, and then click off. Next I'm going to go to Object, Unlock All. And the ones that have been locked, as you can see here, I can now either just move these away. Oops, hang on, let's go back. Sorry. Okay, so sorry, let's just go back again. Okay. So I'm just going to go to Object and then Unlock All, and I can just simply move these away, move my template away, and I have my finished pattern. So the way that this works, let's just show you. You can also just hit backspace a few times, and this should just remove them completely. But you can also drag them away as well, and then delete. It's completely up to you. So let me just explain a little bit how this works. So let's go to our pen tool. I'm going to click a point here, and then I'm just going to, there we go, create a nice curved line. Let's get the attributes of our pattern, and then go to the stroke. Let's just add an arrowhead to it. Oh, wrong way. There we go. Okay, and we can also, hang on, copy. I'm just about to explain what this is all about. Let's just move one down here as well. Okay, so the idea is when you basically construct your skirt, this is basically a fold line, and this is our guideline. So essentially you would interface this area here within this grain line, sorry, within this this guideline area. So this whole area here would be interfaced. You would then fold this panel in, stitch the two together, these two lines together across here, and that would essentially create the, let's say the, how would you explain it, the outer flap. So basically this would go on the inside of your other skirt. Okay, so that's the center front, and essentially this would be on the inside of your skirt, which would allow you vent to open and for it to not have any, let's say, any raw edges showing. Okay, we're now basically going to change the other part. So this is obviously the right side of our block. Okay, so when the vent was opened, like so, you would see, essentially you would see this flap before any raw edges. I hope that makes sense. Surely, hopefully the people that are basically not new to sewing garments together will understand this concept. Okay, so we're going to start off with the front, but the left side this time. So once again, we're going to get our template. I'm going to go to my rectangle tool. There we go. I'm going to click anywhere on the page, and I'm going to hit 4 cm because the width of my vent is 4 cm, and then height is 30 centimeters. Great stuff. Let's just get to Big Section tool, select this panel, eyedropper tool, and then select it as a guideline. There we go. Then I'm just going to take this point and drag it up until it meets perfectly, just like so. Next, I'm going to get my rectangle tool again. I'm going to click just at that corner point. I'm going to do 30 centimeters and make sure it doesn't matter about the width, as long as the height is 4 centimeters, that's perfect. And click OK. And as you can see, I'm just going to select off, get my small selection tool. I'm going to click this end line. I'm just going to drag it in, hold down the shift key to lock it to the horizontal. Just going to drag it until it meets my pattern block. Okay, perfect. So next what we're going to do is I'm going to get my small selection tool, click and drag over this upper point, hit the enter key, 0 horizontal, and then 2.5 down. Okay, so that will match our other front panel. Click OK. Next, I'm going to take this lower point here, so I'm going to click and drag over that point. Oops. I'm then going to hit the enter key. I'm going to go 0, and then I'm going to go minus 4 centimeters. Click OK. And same with this point, I'm going to click and drag with the small selection tool, hit the enter key, I'm going to go 4, and then 0, and click OK. Perfect. Alright, so this is essentially what our front's going to look like. But we need to do a few more things before we finish this. So I'm going to get my big selection tool here, I'm going to click on this lower piece, I'm going to then click transform, reflect, and then horizontal, copy, and then I'm going to move that panel up until it meets that line. Okay, really simple. Just get your big section tool, click, and then hold down the shift key to keep it locked in line until it snaps in place. Same with this side. Get my big selection tool, click on this panel, right click, transform, reflect, across the vertical, hit copy, and we're just going to move this into place. Perfect, so this is our template completed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my big selection tool, I'm going to click on this panel, hold down the shift key, click on this panel to queue up the selection, click, click. I'm just going to go object and then lock selection. Next, I'm going to get my small selection tool, click on the pattern, which is this one here, which is not selectable because I've locked it. Okay, so let's go Object, Unlock All. There we go. Let's go to my big selection tool, select, shift, hold down the shift key, select these to queue them up, Object, Lock, Selection. Let's just check. Yeah, so we can now select our pattern without interfering with the other pieces. So small selection tool, just there, select your outline of your pattern, go to the pen tool, add anchor point, click on this point, maybe add, let's say, 3 pieces or 3 more points to that line, go to the small selection tool, click and drag, click, and let's put that one, oh, I done messed up a little bit. We actually don't need that 3rd point, so I'm just going to delete anchor point. There we go. Also, I've made a little mistake down here. Let's zoom in. I haven't dragged it all the way to that point. That's very important that this matches your template, okay? And then we can just drag this line down, holding the shift key so it locks it to the vertical until it lines up. And then just let's grab that point, small selection tool, click, and then drag. Okay, so that is the outline of our block. Now let's create our guidelines and our fold lines. So I'm just going to get this, use my small selection tool, click on that line to get the attributes, go to my line tool, I'm going to click and drag using that template. There we go, let's click off. I'm going to do the same again, line tool, click and drag, there we go. And then let's create our guidelines. Let's go to the small selection tool, click on this line to get the attributes, go to the pen tool. Yeah, no, let's not do the pen tool, let's get the line tool. I'm going to click and drag, perfect. I'm going to click and drag here, I'm just going to trace these lines in. There we go, and this one as well. Perfect. Okay, so next I'm going to go to Object, Unlock All, which gives us our template back. I'm going to move that away, and as you can see, those guidelines and fold lines are left in place. I can then delete my template by hitting backspace. And let's just copy these. So let's go to the big section tool, click on the element, copy, paste, and then let's just rotate that and move it into the correct position. Paste a new one in. Let's rotate that one as well. Oops. And move that one into position. So essentially this is the hem. This is the facing of the bottom of your skirt, as it is here as well, and we're going to add that to the back in a minute. And so basically this panel folds along this line, and these guidelines show you where these panels will end up once they've been folded in. So you'd stitch along this line to create the facing for the inside of the skirt. Same here, this would fold in, and it would then be stitched along this line, or these lines, to the facing. And then when these two panels are placed together, you'll find that one piece overlaps the other, and we have a really beautiful finished vent. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to look at our back panel. Okay, we need to add a facing to our back panel. So let's go to our small selection tool just here. Let's click on that bottom line. Let's hit the Enter key. Let's take the preview off because it's a bit confusing. And then the horizontal, we're going to go 0, and we're going to go down by 4. So we're adding 4 cm to the bottom of our dress, which is our facing. And let's just click OK, and that moves down. Next, let's go to our small selection tool, select this fold line. Let's go to our line tool, and then in line, see how it's lining up there? Just in line with that, just click and drag, hold down the shift key to lock it to the horizontal, and put it in place. Lovely. You can even, if you want to keep it consistent, put a guideline in as well. So small selection tool, click on that guideline, get your line tool, find out where it lines up, click and drag, hold down the shift key to lock it in place, and there you go. And you can even copy and paste one of those in as well to make it very clear for you or your customer. Okay, great. So that's pretty much the bottom vent finished off. Really nice and simple. If you have any questions, please just leave us some comments. Leave us some comments in the comment section on the bottom of the page. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to group these patterns, okay? Because at the moment they're all individual elements. So if I move them around, we're going to have some problems. So I'm just going to get my big selection tool. I'm going to click and drag over this entire area here. I'm just going to go Object and then Group. There you go. You see now when we move it, it's all grouped. Same with the right front. Going to go Object and then Group. Same with the back. Click and drag with the big selection tool. Object and then Group. Perfect. Let's check the top. Yeah, these are absolutely fine. They've been grouped already. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to change the neckline ever so slightly, okay? Because at the moment it's just a standard basic bodice block neckline. We're going to make it slightly larger as we have in our photo. So let's have a closer look. So a slightly larger neckline. I actually haven't put a facing on this. This is why we have raw edges, but I'm going to show you how to do that as well. Okay, so now we're going to create a very simple yet beautiful neckline for this block. So at the moment we have this lovely dart or pleat coming from the side neck, and we want to basically maintain that, but at the same time we want to create a much larger neckline. So to do this, what we're going to do is essentially we're going to close this upper dart by opening the bottom dart. We're going to then draw in our neckline, and then we're going to basically open that dart back up again. So we have the pattern translated. And it's really very simple. So first of all, we have some decisions to make. First of all, actually, let me just grab a point. I'm just going to get my big selection tool, grab my point. I'm going to hit Edit, Copy, and then Edit, Paste, or Control V on your keyboard. Control C to copy, Control V to paste. So first of all, I'm going to go to my shoulder point, which is just located here. I'm actually going to create another point there as well, just by copying and pasting in. Okay, so first of all, it's completely up to you. I'm going to take my measuring tape, I'm going to measure along from the shoulder point towards the neck, and I'm going to measure, let's say, how wide I want my neckline to be. So here you can see it's probably about 7 centimeters. So it's we still have quite a good shoulder, but we're in between, so it's not too thin, it's not too large, so it's about 7 centimeters. So I'm going to, at this point, get my large selection tool, click on that point, hit the Enter key, and then type in 7 and then 0 vertically. So 7 horizontally. We can preview that. So I know that this distance is 7 centimeters. I'm going to hit Copy. Next, I'm going to go to my rotation tool, click. I'm just going to click on this shoulder point. I'm just going to rotate that up until we actually meet the shoulder line. So I now know that this is essentially 7 centimeters from this point to this point. There we go. So I'm happy with this distance. I'm happy for this to be my shoulder line. So my neckline is going to start from this point and then go to the neck. Okay, I'm going to also do this on the back as well. So I'm just going to, actually no, let's not do that just yet. Let's start off with the front. So we need to now separate this block, or turn this block into 2 separate panels so we can then shut the top dart. To do this, I'm going to get my small selection tool and I'm going to click this point here and I'm going to drag it up to my bust point. Okay. This is important because when we actually come to rotating this block, we need this as our point of rotation. If this was slightly lower, for example, and we rotated, we would have some issues. So I'm just going to bring this point up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Pathfinder. So go to Window and then look for Pathfinder, which is here, which essentially looks like this. It says Pathfinder. I'm then going to go to the Unite option and click that. Now what that does is that essentially separates the two blocks. Okay. But before we do that, we're going to go to our big selection tool. We're going to click on this whole block and we're going to go Object, Ungroup. Okay. And next, small selection tool, I'm going to click on this bust line because I want to separate it into 2 pieces. I'm going to go to my cut tool and cut. And the reason why is because we want this panel. Oh, hang on, it's grouped still. Let's go Object, Ungroup. I want this panel here to be separate from this panel, which it is. Okay. So let's just then get our big selection tool, click and drag over all of these elements on this block, and go Object, Group. Same with the opposite side. Big selection tool, click and drag, Object, Group. Perfect. Next, big selection tool, I'm going to click on this block here. Everything's been selected. I'm going to go to my rotation point, or my rotation tool, click on the bust point, and then close by rotating that upper dart. Okay. So essentially all of our shaping is in this bottom here. And essentially you could leave it like that, where you'd have no dart. Essentially, this block now has no dart here or no plie here whatsoever. All of the shaping is has been put into the waist seam. But we want to create a nice neckline. So we have our point on the shoulder. We know this is where the neckline is going to start from. We also want to add this to the front. So we want to find out how deep our front neck drop is going to be. Okay, so let's have a look. So as you can see, this point here is essentially where this is the front neck point, which is this point here on our block. So you can see it falls slightly lower, probably about 2 or 3 centimeters from this point. So I'm simply going to go to my block. I'm going to get this point. I'm going to, let's go to our key. I'm going to grab this point with my big selection tool. I'm then going to go edit, copy, and then I'm just going to Control V, paste it in. I'm going to place this at my center front neck point. I'm going to hit the Enter key while it's selected. Let's remove the preview. I'm going to go 0 horizontally, and I'm going to go down by, let's say, 2.5 cm, and we can preview that. Perfect. So this is going to be the front neck drop, and this is going to be the side neck point. I'm going to hit copy. So now we have 2 points for which we can draw in our new neckline. So I'm going to go to my pen tool, click and hold, pen tool. I'm going to click this point, and then click and drag, or click and hold, and then drag to create a lovely new neckline. And you can have it as a V, so if the line's straight, when it's mirrored, you'll have a V shape. Or, if you go to the pen tool, then go to anchor point, if you click on this point here, you can then create a much smoother curve, okay? And if you hold down the shift key, it will lock it to the horizontal, so you get a really lovely smooth curve. Ideally you want this to be a 90-degree angle, and for this to roughly be a 90-degree angle. That way you'll get a really lovely curve over the shoulder, or a smooth curve over the shoulder, and same over the center front as well. So that is my new neckline, really simple. So how do I now translate this back into my existing block, where we have an upper pleat and a lower dart? Well, that's really simple. All we do is we simply locate the lines on our block and separate, or basically close this block once more. So I'm going to go to my small selection tool, click on this line, go to the cut tool and cut where that original dart was located. Okay, so now we know that this is for the front and this is for the side of the front. Okay, we can also get rid of some of these points. We don't actually need these anymore. So big selection tool, click and just hit backspace a few times. There we go. Oh, not all of it, sorry, that was grouped. So on here we're just going to go to the small selection tool to pick up just that element. Click on it, hit delete, zoom out. Okay, so once again this is now separated, so we now need to separate these two blocks and rotate it back into position. So let's go to our big selection tool, let's click and drag over this left hand panel. As you can see, we haven't got this line, we've only got this this neckline on the left hand panel. I'm going to go to my rotation tool. I'm just going to click on this point, the bust point, and I'm just going to click and rotate this closed again. Now luckily, where is it? Now, as you can see, luckily we have that bust line. Okay, so that gives us a guideline for how our original dart setup was looking. So, if we basically draw a guideline out from this point, select this block, click the rotation tool, we can then click on this line and rotate it so that it fits perfectly that bust line. Okay, so they're now exactly how it was before, which is lovely. So now we want to basically tidy up this upper neckline, because at the moment we still have our existing neckline in there. I'm going to go to my small selection tool, click on the outline of my left block, go to the cut tool, and I'm going to cut at the side neck point, or the new side neck point, and also where it meets the dart. So now we've separated this whole upper half from our block. Okay, so I'm just going to get my small selection tool, highlight those two lines, and hit backspace a few times. Same for the front. I'm going to highlight the outline of my block, go to the cut tool, cut, and cut, go to the small selection tool, click over these two, and then click and drag over these to select them, and then hit backspace a few times. And these are obviously separate from our block, so now we're just going to join them. Small selection tool, click and drag, right click, join, click and drag, right click, join, same with these, click and drag, right click, join. And it seems that we've taken up the attributes of that line. So I'm just going to get my small selection tool, click and drag over the outline of your block, go to the eyedropper tool, get the attributes. Perfect. Okay, so that is essentially the front of our bodice block completed, looking really nice. Now we're going to work on the back block. So, if you remember, we said we had a shoulder of 7 centimeters, and we can measure that just by going to the line tool, and then clicking and dragging to measure it. 7 cm. Perfect. And we already have our point in place. But first of all, because we have this dart here, it's going to cause some issues. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a guideline. So let's navigate over, get to our guideline, get the large selection tool, click on this line, let's navigate back, get our line tool, and we're going to draw a straight line between the side neck point and the shoulder point. Okay, just like that. Perfect. Next, I'm going to get my big selection tool. So this is going to be our new shoulder line. Okay, going to get my big selection tool, click on that point, hit the enter key, type in -7 horizontally, 0 vertically, and hit copy. I'm then going to rotate as we did before on the front block. Click on that point and rotate it up so we know that that is 7 centimeters. Okay, which is lovely. Now, because essentially our dart is pretty much in the same location, we don't actually need this dart. We don't need to close this shoulder. Okay, we're going to use this point. So, also we have another option. So let's just get this point. We're going to go edit, copy, edit, paste. I'm just going to place this at the nape of the neck, or the back of the neck here. So if we have a look at our pattern, as you can see, this pretty much goes to the nape of the neck. Okay, it's only slightly lower. So essentially we can keep that point the same, but it's up to you. Maybe you want to create a large scoop neck, or maybe a V-neck. It's completely up to you at this point. So I'm just going to stick, well, I'm going to do about 2.5 or 2 cm down from the nape of the neck to give it a lovely curve. So I'm going to select that point with my big selection tool, hit the enter key, hit 0 horizontally, and let's go 2.5 down and hit copy. As I said, you can have your point, let's say here, and then when we draw in our back neck curve, let's go to the pen tool. I'm going to click this point and this point. I'm going to go back to the pen tool, click and hold, go to the anchor point tool, click this point and drag, hold down the shift key to lock it to the horizontal, and then we create a really nice, lovely, sloping back neckline. As I said, you can always do maybe a deep scoop. You could even have a V. You know, it's completely up to you what you do here. I mean, you know, that could be interesting. Okay, it's up to you how you want to play around with this. But I'm just going to go with a very simple, a very simple classic back neckline. Okay, so now we need to basically consolidate the block because we've got all this information up here that's no longer necessary. So let's go to our small selection tool. Let's click on our points and get rid of them. There we go. Don't need them anymore. Same with this one. And now I'm just going to remove this upper block here. We can also get rid of this guideline. So let's just select that, hit backspace a few times. Small selection tool, select the outline of your block, and then we're going to go to the cut tool. I'm going to cut here, and I'm also going to cut here. And that just simply removes that upper block completely. And then I can simply just join these two lines together. So I'm just going to select these 2 points, right click, join. And there you have it. That's our brand new neckline, okay, looking really nice. So that's essentially our skirt. The sample that we've produced online, which is here, we have now produced it in Adobe Illustrator, okay. And that's it. Okay, so next, what we're going to do is we're going to finish up our patterns. We're going to add all of this content, this information that we had before. I'm going to use my big selection tool. I'm going to click over all of this. I'm just going to move this back in place, try and line it up as best as possible. Let's zoom in. So obviously, there's the center back, there's the bust line. You can also, with your keyboard, with your arrows, you can nudge it down with the down arrow, you can nudge it up, you can nudge it left and right. If you hold down the shift key, it does much bigger movements, okay? So you can now adjust this a little bit. This is a little bit higher up now, because obviously we've cut that pattern off. So I'm going to go big selection tool, select this panel. Let's just move it down into the center. Same over here, we can move this down. We can probably get rid of the bust point because we know that's the bust point. And we can maybe move this up, or it's actually fine where it is. Okay, we're going to do the same for the skirt blocks. Let's just get all of this information, big selection tool. I'm going to drag it over. This is our back. There we go. Let's zoom in a little bit. So let's just nudge it along with our keyboard arrows. There we go. That looks really nice. Yeah, perfect. Oh, I've actually lost the tail end of my grain line there. You can add that in yourself. There we go. And also we want to duplicate this because we have 2 front panels now. We have a right and we have a left. So I'm just going to get this content. I'm going to get my big selection tool, click on this, hold down the shift key, click my grain line. There we go. I can then go edit, copy, edit, paste. There we go. Paste that in place. And we can also take this center front, place on fold. Ah, that's incorrect. Let's just go center front, because obviously we don't have a fold line anymore, because this is going to be a seam, because we now have our vent at the front. So, sorry. Let's get our small selection tool, click, edit, copy, edit, paste, and it can go on our center front on the opposite block. And next, all we need to do is basically rename these blocks. Okay, so let's go for, this is no longer the bodice block, this is now the two-piece dress block. And this panel is now the back upper panel, or bodice panel, depends whatever you want to call it. And let's go small selection tool, click on these and these ones. We can then just center a line, and we can align them as well, move them back into place just to make it a little bit neater. Once again, to edit this text, we do is to go to small selection tool, double click on the text, and then you can edit it. So, oh dear, two-piece dress block, and then we're going to go front upper panel, and then once again go small selection tool, just select all of these elements. Let's just center a line and then align them horizontally, move that back into place, make it nice and neat, and check the rest of the information. The bust line's correct. Center front place on fold, yep, this is going to be mirrored, so that's fine. Center back, this has a seam, so that's great as well, so we're not placing this on fold. Here, center back, yep, not on fold either. Center front, not on fold, and then here we have, so what is it? It is the two-piece dress block, then we have front lower panel. Let's just get this, centralize, move it back into place. So over here, two-piece dress block, back lower panel, select these, center line, smashing. There we go. Okay, lovely, it's looking perfect. Okay, I think everything's done. There is one thing that we need to do. Do you remember before we had this dart and it was actually 2.5 cm lower? The reason why is because if we were to twirl this block up right now, you would have a point over the bust line, okay, which is not particularly attractive. So what we normally do is we drop this lower dart leg or dart point down by about 2.5 to 3 cm, and that gives you a nice smooth curve over the bust line. So we're going to do that now, just to finish up this block. So I'm going to get my small selection tool, I'm going to click over both of these items. Actually, no, we're not. First of all, we're going to go to our rectangle tool, click and hold, go to our ellipse tool, and then here I'm going to simply click, and this will bring up your ellipse dialog, and I'm going to put here, so the width of it, so if the radius is 2.5, we want it to be about 5 cm by 5 cm. Click OK. Now by that what I mean is the distance from here to here is 2.5 centimeters, and same here as well. Okay, so let's just move that into place, and what that does is, let's turn it into a guideline. What that does is basically give us a location for this lower dart leg, okay? So we know that it wants to be about here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to get this point. As you can see, this is two separate blocks at the moment, so I'm going to go get my small selection tool, click, I'm going to get my pen tool, add anchor point, let's just add it here, and then let's select the other line, add anchor point tool here, and then I'm just going to simply drag this into the center, and then drag this one into the center. Okay, let's do that again. So you have your points marked, just going to get that point, oops, that's the circle. Let's click on the line, click on the point, drag it so it's in line with the bust point. Same with this one, drag it in line, there we go. And then we're just going to consolidate these two blocks together, so we no longer have this line. So I'm going to get my small selection tool, click and drag, go to my Unite or Pathfinder. You can find that we're going to Window, Pathfinder, and then unite the two blocks. And there you go. So as you remember, we had that 2.5 cm drop, and it's now back in place. So now when we do actually sew this block up, it'll be a really nice smooth curve over the bust line, which is fab. Okay, so that's essentially our block finished off. Now it's a good idea to go File and then Save As. And then in the same folder, so Desktop, same folder, you can now save this as, oh look, I've been saving this already. You can now save it as the same name, but instead of bodice, you can put pattern, or even finished pattern. There we go. And just simply click Save. Click OK. Okay, so now our pattern is pretty much finished off. The only thing left to do now is either you can take a look at our other design tutorials, like necklines or sleeves, for example, which will show you how to maybe add a different sleeve type or a different neckline to basically customize your pattern further. However, if you feel like your pattern is finished, then I would say the best thing to do is head on over to a different tutorial, which is how to add seam allowance to your finished pattern. There's a download link at the bottom of this tutorial, which should take you to that. It's very, very informative, very, very easy as well. And also, when you've added your seam allowance, it's probably a good idea to have a look at how to transfer your digital pattern to a multi-page PDF using our templates. And we have a tutorial that shows you how to do that also. And once again, you can find that at the bottom of this page as a tutorial link. Otherwise, thank you so much, and see you soon.